Like Minds Like Mine has gone through a wonderful phase over the last 2 decades where we have really slowly been shifting people's language away from the biomedical model. So what that means in terms of our language when we're championing the Like Minds Like Mine program is we're wanting to talk about mental illness as an experience, not as an illness, not as something that makes people sick, because we need to look at we need to frame the language positively. And your experience may not have been positive. I mean, we call it mental distress for a reason, it's distressing. But in order to shift attitudes and behaviours, we need to try and focus on language as being experience. And the reason we use the word experience is because when you say to people, it's an experience, psychologically we go through this process, this patterning of our brain of saying an experience is something that everyone has. An experience is something that's short-term, short-lived, that you can recover from. It's not an illness that needs to be managed for the rest of my life. So in that terms, we try as much as possible, unless we're really specifically trying to challenge a diagnosis and the myths around a diagnosis, we try instead to look at symptoms that might be common across lots of diagnoses. For example, we talk about demystifying psychosis because psychosis might be a big scary word, but actually we can bring it back to some normalizing behaviors and experiences that everyone has by saying, when you hear your voice being called and you turn around, there's no one there. So that's not dissimilar, but it's from hearing voices, but it's not distressing. When I say the word nits to you, try really hard not to scratch your head. That's you understanding that it's a feeling, a tangible feeling that you have that other people in the room can't experience, don't feel. That you might have seen someone that you can't possibly have seen because perhaps they've passed, or perhaps they're living overseas now, but you know that you saw that person, but I can't explain it to Noradine that I just saw that person because she didn't see them. But those are really normal everyday human experiences, and we can say, just if we turned up the volume really, really a lot on those experiences, those normal experiences, then you kind of understand what psychosis is like. It's easier for people to understand than trying for them to understand, for example, what bipolar or schizophrenia is like, even though psychosis might be part of those diagnoses. So we're not clinicians, and we don't want to go down a biomedical model. We want people to understand it in terms of language as an experience. And the biggest challenges, I guess, in terms of language is speaking about things as absolute. So, for example, medication might be an absolute. People seem to be really pro-medication or really against medication, and we've got to be really careful in Like Minds to not alienate anyone. So we can say things like medication might be an important piece of a jigsaw puzzle for some people. It wasn't an important piece of the jigsaw puzzle for me, but the important thing to remember is that there is a really large jigsaw puzzle for everybody, and people need to find the pieces that fit for them. So it's about encompassing everyone's worldviews in that and using language that's inclusive. The important, first and foremost thing you have to keep in mind is keeping yourself safe in that conversation. So it can often feel like the media is in control, and in order to get this opportunity to speak to the media, then you need to kind of do what you're told. You need to remember that it's your story and it's your power, and you are gifting them with your story. So you are actually the person with power and control. In order to keep that power and control, there's a few things that you can do. It's kind of my top tips really in speaking to media. One is find out as much as you can about the reporter that's going to interview you before they do. So read the other articles they do, find out where their worldview is, perhaps where their political leanings are, find out what it is that you think they want to get out of this interview, what's in it for them, because there'll be in it for them. Secondly, if you're comfortable with the way that person has reported before, then by all means engage with them, but find out from them, ask them for a list of questions. that they're going to give you first. That's really, really important. Even if they don't have a list of questions, they should be able to give you topic points, bullet points, things that they want to know. Then take those bullet points. I know media have deadlines and it's fine to do with deadlines, but make sure that you practice what your key messages are. So if you've got your questions, go through it with someone that you really trust and go, these are the questions, get them to ask it for you so you can have a bit of a practice of how you're going to fit your story and your key messages into the small amount of time that the media give you. The fourth thing to remember, I think I'm up to 4, is you might have an hour-long interview, but probably the most you'll get is 30 seconds or a minute. So you may need to nail your key points a few times. You need to really hone them. And keep in mind that you might have 12 sentences strung together, but they might take a sound bite. So make sure you're confident with your sound bites in terms of if they take only a proportion of your sentence, that they'll still get the message across. So that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice to get right. Then if it's a written article, most journalists are really happy if they've got a relationship with you to give you a draft. You may not be able to change that draft, but they are happy to give you a heads up. This is what's going to come out on Saturday. This is what's going to be in this evening's news, for example. And then the last thing to remember is have some support. When the media article comes out or the interview is aired, make sure you've got the people you trust around you so that you can, because even though you think it's gone awesome and it probably has gone awesome, you will find yourself dealing with some feelings of, oh my goodness, it's now out there, everybody knows. And yeah, it's really important, even if you don't need it, to have people you trust around you to support you when it happens.